Welcome to the Equipcast for the Archdiocese of Omaha. Designed to help leaders to transform their cultures, to embody the pastoral vision, to be one church, encountering Jesus, equipping disciples, and living mercy.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Equipcast. I am your host, Jim Jansen, and I am really excited to introduce to you some old friends of mine. We were just talking before the show. We've been friends for almost 20 years. Joining us on the podcast today, we have Aaron and Brooke Keller. Welcome, guys. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great. Doing really well. Truth be told, I'm actually finishing a quarantine, which is a rough stretch to do when your children are also at home and when it's really cold out, but super excited to thank you for the gift of technology to be able to connect and do the podcast. So we want to talk today a little bit about like the pandemic has become a gift for you all to make some cool connections with your neighbors. And we want to talk about that today. But before we jump in, like tell us a little bit about yourselves, your faith journey. When did you guys first encounter Jesus?
Thanks for inviting us, Jim. It's a lot of fun to be here with you again after I actually did the math. I've known you for 22 years, Jim. So
okay. It's the 2 that makes all the difference.
That's right. Yeah. Those are the hard 2 years though. Yeah. So I grew up Catholic and lived my young life going through the motions, I'll say that many long lifetime Catholics do. But I think I really came into my own, so to speak, or really first encountered Jesus, or first realized the encounter with Jesus during my college years. Mm-hmm. I was blessed to be a part of the Newman Center and involved in the Newman Center, and I just had so many tremendous witnesses around me where I could tangibly see what it meant to truly live your faith, what it meant to truly be in relationship with Jesus Christ. So it was really that witness of everyone around me that really kind of inspired me to take a step forward and search for him myself.
That's awesome. I know. I mean, our stories have a lot of rhyme in that regard because mine was similar. I remember one of the most profound things for me in my college years is when I ran into people who were actually my age, who didn't seem to be grossly socially needy, who loved Jesus. And that was so confusing to me. The Lord used it to grab my attention and honestly to, help my heart to say yes to his invitation, which it wanted to anyway. I just had a mental block because I didn't know anyone my age that was into their faith. So yeah, community has been, I know, huge for both of us in our journey. Brooke, what about you? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Same baptized Catholic, born and raised. I would say probably got into my faith more, it sounds kind of cliche, but tech retreat my junior year of high school. If you ask my mom, I say that I loved high school. She's like, you did not like high school. And I used to block those things out because after my junior year, I went to tech probably in February. Oh, it was the world's longest tech. The last 4 days, we got snowed in.
That's a fun record. Okay.
Yeah. In Hastings, Nebraska. But after that, I just really found friends that wanted to be holy and was like, hey, you want to stop in the chapel quick before track practice? Or I'm going to go pray. You want to come with me? And just had a really solid core of like 4 to 5 people that I could live my faith with, and was surrounded by awesome priests at Pius. I'm from Lincoln. So at Pius, there's awesome young priests that were very energetic about their faith. And so just kind of went from there. And obviously in the Diocese of Lincoln, Melissa had just started as the youth director there, that they had never had that position. And so I think all of those things just kind of came at the right time. And
yeah, shout out for Melissa Lucas Ford.
Yeah.
Mutual friend.
Yeah. So she was a huge influencer. And so I just really was then surrounded with people and had the people that I needed to make faith fun. And I didn't know, like, there was it was like opening up this whole Catholic world that I had just no idea existed.
That's hilarious. I should just, before we go any farther, Aaron and Brooke Keller, You're not siblings. You all are married, as a matter of fact. I mean, I think the really sharp people in the audience were like, hey, they have the same last name. Tell us a little bit about your family. How long have you guys been married?
16 years.
I love the pause. You didn't know that was good. Aaron has it memorized.
16 and a half. I'm an engineer, so I like all the numbers.
We've been married for 16 and a half years. I'm from Lincoln. We lived in Kansas for the first 10 years of our marriage, and we moved back to Omaha. Are we in our 7th year here almost? Yeah.
Yeah.
And go to St. Stephen the Martyr Parish here in Omaha. We have a 13-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old daughter.
And Aaron, you alluded to the day job. You're an engineer by trade.
Engineer. Yes.
And Brooke, what's your day job?
I'm a professional volunteer.
Okay, that's awesome. Which means you basically just have no boundaries. You can't say no. Is that what does it mean to be a professional volunteer?
If you ask Aaron, he might say that's what it means.
Okay.
Currently I am doing the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd program for St. Stephen's preschool. So I am up there 4 days a week in the morning doing all the preschool classes through catechesis. And then I am the home and school president for St. Stephen's. And so that's keeps me fairly busy.
That's awesome. Now, for those who don't know, what is Catechesis of the Good Shepherd? Just give people a little kind of appetizer of this, just like what it is, and then like some of the fruit and the experience, because it's such a beautiful youth formation program.
Yeah. So Catechesis of the Good Shepherd is the observation that the young child is in relationship with Jesus, but it just looks different than we as adults express things because they're little. And so they don't have the same words to express that they are in relationship with Jesus. I do 3 to 6 year olds is level 1, and there's level 2, 6 to 9, and then 9 to 12 for level 3. But the whole program is based on scripture and liturgy, and it helps the young child. It gives them the opportunity for quiet and to hear God's voice and just to build that relationship with the Good Shepherd, because if they fall in love with the Good Shepherd, they will always want to do right by him.
So tell us, like, if somebody were to come and watch a Catechesis of the Good Shepherd moment, come to visit the atrium, we call it, right? To come to one of the sessions, like what would they see?
So the atrium is the special prepared environment for the young child by the adult. It's the work of the adult to prepare the environment for them. It's Montessori based, so it's child led. So lots of hands-on materials. We have, model size altar and chalice and patens and chasubles and the city of Jerusalem with walls that you can move. And so it's the most shocking part is it's super quiet and super calm.
Yeah. You walk into a room of what, like a half a dozen toddlers, and it's quiet.
Yeah. It's very, very quiet.
And there's no drugs involved either. I mean, it's really a beautiful thing.
Yes. Yeah. It's super quiet. And so because we talk about how do we hear God's voice? Well, we hear God's voice when in the quiet. And so we practice listening very quietly to God's voice. And they have works that they have in the atrium because using your hands helps lead to prayer and contemplation. So they take the story of the birth of Jesus, and then they have a work that goes with it where they can move the figures and enter more fully into the story.
It's a beautiful thing. We've had 2 of my children now who have had some exposure. I mean, I love the way you started it. Like they're really praying. Like you start to get the glimpses like, oh, wow, you are really communing with God now. It's a exceptionally beautiful thing. We'll have you back sometime, do a whole show on Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. Let's maybe transition. I noticed as both of you, as you talked about your stories of faith, you talked about the impact that other people had in this kind of community around you, which I feel like kind of ties in with our main theme today. You guys have done some really cool outreach with your neighbors. When did you begin to first kind of intentionally reach out to your neighbors?
Initially, when we first moved back to Nebraska and moved into our neighborhood, we knew we wanted to be in a safe environment, in a neighborhood that we felt comfortable in. We both grew up in neighborhoods surrounded by friends our age, and just those were joyful moments from our youth, just out riding bikes or playing football with the neighbors from literally sun up to sundown. And those were, again, just such great memories for each of us that we wanted to make sure that we felt confident enough in today's day and age where everything that happens, all the scary things in the world. We wanted to be confident that we could allow our children kind of that same freedom to just be outside, to be playing and kind of have their own boundaries. And we just felt like one of the things we needed to do initially was meet the other parents, just at the basic level of friendships and, how do you just be a good human neighbor? So that was really the start of it. And I think it was within the first week, our neighbor approached Brooke and invited her to a wine night, which I was a little jealous of.
Oh, like WINE, not WHIN. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I was going to say, because she must not have known you yet, because you would have been great at the WHINE night.
Yeah. Probably a little of both, I'm sure.
Yeah. It was L Street Wine Club. I would say we, by the grace of God, landed in a neighborhood that was very active as well. And so I feel like when we moved, it was totally the neighborhood when you're looking at the house, like everybody's peeking through the blinds at like, who's that? And so there was a lot of moms on the street that stayed at home with little kids. I mean, I think Caitlin was like 18 months old at that point. So she was still pretty young. And so they're like, hey, we just started this wine club. You want to come? And I was like, sure. So, I mean, and so we just have been blessed with very chatty and talkative neighbors. And so I think that has helped.
They were receptive at the beginning.
Yeah. And so, and I think that's just always been, like Aaron was saying, I lived in the same house until I went to college. So we were with our neighbors all the time, come home when the street lights come on type. And so and even in Kansas, we knew our neighbors really well. And so, and hung out and just were outside and stuff like that. So I think that was just the nature of our upbringing, was just to be out and meet the neighbors.
Talk a little bit about the effect of the pandemic, because it sounds like you had this desire, okay, we want to connect with our neighbors. It's been part of our childhood, the experience, something you were looking for when you're coming back to Omaha. Like, what did that do to this, growing little community?
I would say maybe even before the pandemic, we had developed over the course of a couple of years, just natural friendships. We, with our neighbors, we've got kids all roughly the same ages. And so, like Brooke said, we were fortunate enough to just to develop natural friendships. And that's such a huge first step to really then truly loving your neighbor. It was probably 2 or 3 years ago now where during prayer, I came to the realization, like, do I really love my neighbors or do I just like that they'll sit outside and have a beer with me? I started to think, what would this be like if they actually knew Jesus? Like, how much greater could our friendship be if they knew Jesus? And so I just a desire started to build up within me that my neighbors would want to know Jesus. Now, that doesn't come easily, right? For people who are non-practicing anything. But again, just building that friendship and then bringing them to prayer really helped me to guide some of those conversations that we've had over the past few years. And, when the pandemic hit, we had nothing else to do, nowhere else to go. And so I'm pretty sure it was almost every day, after we left our home offices, we needed to change our environment. We just stepped outside, it was the summertime and stepped outside and shared a beverage on the driveway. And oftentimes, they'd just walk over with their, lawn chair or their tailgating chair, and we'd sit down and sometimes talk until it got dark. We all of a sudden just had all sorts of space, all sorts of time where we could just be together. And I don't think any of us realized how much our time was consumed with other things before the pandemic.
So you got more time with them, pandemic hits. Okay, no soccer practice, no other activities. You ended up getting more time.
Yeah, significantly more time. All of our sporting events for our children stopped. And we, at least I had kind of seen those opportunities at our kids' sporting events to reach out to the other dads and to build relationships there. So as someone who knew the value of relationships and knew that the Lord worked through just physical, natural relationships, honestly, when the pandemic hit, I was a little downtrodden that we weren't allowed to go out and continue to maintain those. But really, over time, I realized that it was just the Lord redirecting our time to focus on the relationships right here on our street.
And so, just to make this explicit, you've got this beautiful community, right? Hospitable neighbors. Hi, welcome to the neighborhood. Would you like to drink a glass of wine with me? So, great community, but this is not a religious only Catholic compound. This is not a commune. This is a normal neighborhood, suburban life, and everybody's all across the map, the religious spectrum, faith practice map. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I guess I'll start and Brooke can chime in here or there. I mean, I would say when you say all over the map, it's pretty far one-sided and not the sided that we want it to be. So I mean, one of the neighbors sometimes as she's talking, she reminisces about her youth group days, but it's been quite some time since she's experienced church. And some of our other neighbors grew up Catholic. One of the guys, and I'll share this, I'm sure it's at one point, but one of the guys 2 houses down grew up Catholic, grew up in a Catholic home, but pretty much has left his faith and left all faith, to be honest, based on the conversations we've had. So they're definitely, if you were to say, far left side in terms of their journey with Christ, the thresholds.
Now talk about that, because that's a mental framework that, Aaron, you've been part of the mentorship program for lay leaders, one of the first, alumni of that program. Talk a little bit, left side's kind of a common parlance for us, imagining this journey, kind of mentally lay it out, maybe not step by step, but for people, kind of like this vision of this spiritual journey.
Sure. So yeah, the left side, I mean, kind of like how we read a book, we always read from left to right. And in its most general sense, as you move from quote unquote left to right on this journey, you're growing in love for the Lord. You're growing in your relationship with God. So somebody who would, again, quote unquote, be on the far left side, they're very distant from God and his church, maybe even hostile towards it, towards him and the church. And there's different moments in our lives, different periods in our lives as we go on this journey, as we move through these thresholds where we're hopefully growing closer and closer to Christ. And then kind of right in the middle is this decision point of, I've searched and desired Christ. Am I truly going to be a disciple of his? And there's this tipping point between the left and the right sides. And then once you realize the great joy that's in front of you when you say yes, there's still so much more for you to continue to grow in your relationship with Christ, where you're growing and learning. And then, all of a sudden you want to be out there doing the work of the Lord, doing the work of the church, and you become a disciple, a missionary disciple, and then you teach others how to make disciples. And so there's this threshold that we speak of far left, very far away from the church, very far away from the Lord, maybe even hostile, to eventually coming to trust and know the Lord, and then truly to hold him at the center of your heart and to do everything that he asks us to do.
Okay. So you're really, that's just a mental framework for, just for this spiritual journey that everybody goes on, in some way, different speeds, different expressions as they go through that. With that kind of mental framework, most of your neighbors wouldn't be self-describing as Christians or disciples. You're saying most of them would be in a position where they're like, well, I mean, maybe, because they're American, maybe they would give like the Christianity thing a head nod. But other than that, there's very little about their attitudes in their lives that seems to indicate that they're actively pursuing a relationship with the Lord. And that wasn't off-putting to you.
Yeah, I would say that's probably a pretty good summary. I think the thing that we've been blessed with on our street is that there's a lot of natural virtue on our street. So even though they may be far left or not even believe in, there's just a lot of like, even all the people that our girls hang out with on the street, like they're 2-parent households with loving homes, not a lot of drama. Everybody kind of just seems to be on the same page of like, yes, let's protect our children from crazy people. And so I think there's just a lot of natural virtue and natural generosity. Like, man, you ask for a cup of sugar and you'll get 5. I think that also kind of helps, even though like from the threshold standpoint, they may not be on the far right. There's just a lot of that natural virtue.
And that's helpful. That's a really helpful distinction, because this is what's sometimes confusing, dare I say, even scandalous, where just because someone is a Christian doesn't mean they're a nice person, sadly, sometimes. And just because someone isn't a church-going member and isn't in relationship with the Lord doesn't mean that they're not a nice person. And now you've got these people who are like, well, yeah, they're not maybe active in a church. They wouldn't, claim to be close with God. And yet they're nice, they're welcoming, you're making real connections there. You mentioned earlier, we just kind of, we made some, I think you used the word like, it's just some natural connections. We said some natural things in common. Kids, but I get the feeling there was more than just the kids and enjoying a beverage on the driveway. What first kind of brought you all together?
Oh, good question. What brought us all together? I mean, the proximity is certainly part of it. We've got other neighbors too that we'll say hi to and be friendly with, but just being in a similar state of life with the children, when the guys are together, obviously we talk about being husbands and fathers and everything that goes along with that.
You say naturally. That doesn't always happen when people talk to their neighbors. I was expecting you to say, naturally, we talk about football until it gets too depressing and then we move on, but like, how did the conversations begin to move beyond superficial?
We still start out our conversations about the weather and sports. Those are easy entries into something more. And to be honest, when there's multiple of us hanging out, whether it's just all the guys or all the guys and ladies, the conversation pretty well stays at that level, I would say. It doesn't get real deep, real philosophical. We don't challenge each other a whole lot when it's the full group. Really, when you really see the fruit of good conversation is when it's just you and one of the other neighbors. I had just an incredible opportunity. It's been probably 2 years now where we've had a number of years of just building natural friendships. I had already started praying for my neighbors and for the Lord just to open up opportunities for deeper, better conversations. And it was a couple of summers ago, I recall, and got done mowing the lawn and just decided to sit out front. We've got a couple of chairs out front of our house. I always like to just sit out front and, kind of be available, see who else is going to be walking around the neighborhood or sitting outside. So I was doing that, and lo and behold, my neighbor from a couple houses down walked up with 2 drinks in his hand. I had already had a beverage next to me as well. So I didn't know if he meant to be there for a long time or if he came to share. But he just sat down in the chair next to me, and we were just chatting about normal things. And, again, I had been praying for an opportunity to really take the conversation somewhere deeper. And He had shared a handful of things about his life and the different places he had lived, but I didn't really know a lot about his background. And so I basically just asked him a question like, hey, tell me about your childhood. Like, where'd you grow up? What'd you do? What'd you love to do when you were a kid? And he just completely opened up and really shared, I don't know how else to explain it, except that he just shared all of the brokenness that has been part of his life. Just split parents, drugs, abuse, being removed from his household by the state, just
Wow.
really, really broken environment when he was growing up. And that's, for him to be able to just open up and share that with me, first off, I just praise the Lord that he was vulnerable to share those things. But that's really set a foundation for future conversations as well. Just to enter into that brokenness, kind of, invite us to recall the blessings that we have in our lives, nowadays. And those opportunities don't come about when we're all in a big group sitting around the bonfire in the driveways.
Well, and they don't come about when you're sitting inside or when you're sitting in the backyard. I mean, I love how this story begins, that you're done cutting the grass, could have easily just gone inside, and you just decided to sit outside on the front porch, which helped create this opportunity.
Yeah. And that's something we're pretty intentional about, is just being available. Brooke and I were talking about that before, where, again, we want to be outside. We want to be friendly. We want to develop this community of trust amongst all of our neighbors. And that starts with just being available, sitting outside on the front lawn, pulling out our lawn chairs and sitting on our driveways instead of enclosed on our back deck or inside in the 72-degree house, And,
The thresholds, for those who aren't familiar, there's this spectrum of people moving from pre-trust, hostility and suspicion, to trust, to curiosity, like, why do you do that? Openness, and then an active seeking as they're on their way to finally making a decision for the Lord. You talked about people kind of stalling out at trust and being stuck there, but you also shared that there's these kind of moments of openness and vulnerability. Talk about just your recognizing that, your conversation with the Lord on that, and how you stepped into those moments as they presented themselves.
Yeah, I think, Brooke and I always tell each other that we just need to be ourselves. The Lord's going to work through us. We're not going to hide anything. So as we share moments of our own lives, they should also witness the joy that comes along with that. And that joy itself is quite unique. It was really witnessing others living a life of joy that I had never seen before. That's what drew me in. That's what drew me closer. That's what caused me to go seeking myself. So we're ourselves. We're being who we are. We're living our life. We're not hiding anything. And then as those moments come up where they ask questions, we can just reveal everything and reveal more, because they've actually entered into that. They're the ones who have engaged in that conversation. So we're not pressing anything upon them. We're just offering our lives. And when they ask a question, then we can go into greater detail. And then, with COVID and the fear that's going around, there's a lot of fear that has really isolated folks. And one of our neighbors just kept talking about, just kind of meanly, I don't like this, or I don't like that, or I don't want to do this. And
No, I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
So we were out front, and it was as school was approaching, and a couple of our neighbors are teachers. And so, there's so much unknown going back. And we had been talking day after day about, like, what are they going to do? How's it going to look? And and I'm trying to be better about asking more questions, and like, well, why do you think that? And so I finally was just like, what would make it okay for you? Like, what would make it so you weren't nervous. And, and just kind of talking her through that. And I don't remember exactly, but she gave her examples. I was like, okay, well, will there ever be a point when you're okay? And I just kind of kept pressing with those open-ended questions. And finally she was like, well, I'm just afraid of death. And I was like, oh, interesting. And so like, it was just, I'm trying to be asking more questions versus like saying, no, you're wrong and this is why, and trying to get them to come to their own conclusions. And I just thought, I was like, oh, that's exactly, like, that's the root of this.
Well, I mean, that's deep. I'd be like, I don't know, I'm just afraid of dying.
Right.
I mean, it's like, oh, I mean, you're not the only one.
Right.
I actually have a friend who has a cure for that, but
yeah.
Wow.
Right. But it's just kind of, I think for me, I've done some life, again, going back to our shout out, Melissa Ford, she does life coaching. And so it's been a game changer for me, and being able to recognize myself as a beloved daughter of God, and as a recovering people pleaser. I do like being able to ask those questions, knowing that with the answer they give, it's not a reflection on me, it's where they're coming from. And if they don't agree, or it doesn't mean anything about me. And so then it makes it easier for me to be able to be more open and be who I am. And because if you don't like me, that's okay. I'm not for everyone. And so
that's great.
And so it just makes it easier when you love yourself to be able to love others without condition and without judgment, and to be able to be free to just keep asking those questions to move them along through those thresholds of conversion.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Because it is hard sometimes. I mean, I think that at the root of it, sometimes we struggle to interact with people who don't agree with us, who don't, whose life or lifestyle or values are different than us, because fundamentally we're not really secure in who we are. We don't know how to handle disagreement or disapproval from someone who's different. And that deeper security, your own identity as a daughter of God, gave you the ability to engage with them. And, Aaron, as you talked about, as you thought about the thresholds, the attention was drawn away from yourself. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? And you began to attend to them and to listen at a deeper level. I know a number of these conversations have grown and progressed, that the friendship has deepened as you've taken advantage of those opportunities, one-on-one in smaller groups. Talk a little bit about where some of those conversations have gone, because some of them, I remember, as we had talked earlier before the show, really beautiful stuff is happening because of these conversations.
Another neighbor, Brooke, you were standing outside with this neighbor, and I was getting ready to leave for my holy hour, which is 9:00 every Wednesday. So 9:00 at night. And the neighbor was like, where's he going? Such a late hour. And Brooke was just like, hey, he's going to his holy hour. He goes to pray every Wednesday at 9. And this is our neighbor that had talked about her experiences in youth group, but again, probably pretty far left on the threshold. Maybe trusts some individuals, some things about the church, but doesn't really always talk very positively about it. So again, pretty far left. But she came running up to the car window and rolled down the window, and she just said, hey, when you go to pray, will you go to pray for my friend? And I believe her name was Anne. Will you go pray for my friend Anne? She just found out she has breast cancer, and I just know that she needs prayers. And I was caught off guard, right? I didn't know what Brooke and she was talking about. She just kind of runs up to the window, and I'm like, yeah, like I've never had you ask anything of me like that in the 7 years that we've lived here. There's not like these huge light bulbs that go off where we finally realize or see like, oh yeah, now they have Jesus. Now they're in a great
You've not
relationship.
baptized anyone in the driveway yet.
Yeah, not yet. Not
the kiddie pool in back.
Right. But those glimpses are just they're so amazing, and so inspiring, just to see even the little windows that the Lord opens up.
A quick break to tell you about the Clear Path Foundation's workshop. Are you enjoying the conversation about the thresholds of conversion? Do you want to learn even more? In May, the Archdiocese is inviting leaders and their teams to attend the Clear Path Foundations workshop. This workshop will help you develop leaders who are deeply convicted of the church's mission to make disciples, who understand the process of evangelization, and who can spread this vision to others. For more information or to register a team, go to equip.archomaha.org/events.
Well, I think about even when one of the neighbors, when his mom died, he was raised Catholic, but hasn't been to church in a long time. They came over to the door and like, hey, what are we supposed to do for these readings? Can you help us? Like and she was being buried from far in a different state. And so he's like, I have to Zoom with the pastor, but he said to get this book. And so we're like, yep, we can help you. Like thankfully Aaron's dad works at Catholic Cemetery, so we've got a hookup. But
very handy.
So he had all the books. But so you're like, yeah, so I think even those little things of knowing like, oh, I have a Catholic question, I'm gonna go straight to the and ask, and being willing to come over and be like, I don't know what these readings are. Can you walk me through this book? And then we made sure to send flowers to the church. We got all the neighbors together and sent flowers to the church. And then it was the only flowers that were sent because she was being buried in a different state. So wow. I know that was super impactful they sent pictures immediately, saying we walked in and these flowers were front and center from all of you. And so
I love that though, that you've got this natural friendship. They clearly know, Brooke and Aaron, they're the Catholics. And when there's this moment, whether it's just hanging out, having a beer, hey, tell me about your childhood growing up, or this moment where, oh gosh, my friend has cancer, or my parent just died. They're immediately coming to all because you're a safe place. There's a clear receptivity there. And that may be, you may be their only contact with the church, their only, explicit friendship with someone who's deeply connected to the Lord.
I'll also add too, just not only from Aaron and I's perspective, but from our oldest daughter, she's had a lot of conversations with the girls. Like when I had catechesis of the Good Shepherd in our basement, in the summers, obviously the girls could never play down there during the school year, but in the summers, the atrium was set up. And so they would come over, all the neighbor kids, and they would go down there and they would play. And I was like, oh, I don't want my things broken. But at the same time, they're like, hey, no, Jesus is in my family. And they've got the Jesus statue down there and they're using the paten chalice. And
doesn't everybody have a miniature tabernacle in their basement?
Right.
And, oh yeah, that's just the city of Jerusalem. You don't have one in your basement?
Right. And the ones I had in my house were huge compared to what I have currently in my atrium. So they, I was like, oh, I don't want them playing with my things. But at the same time, they're just like, no, the Bible is in my, they're using the Bible as their cookbook, and they're going through and reading it. So I think too, and I know Gabby right now, Gabby's she's a teenager now, and these girls are dealing with hard stuff. And just recently she was like, Mom, it's just because they don't know Jesus. And I keep trying to tell them. And so for her to be able to recognize that too and want to share that, I think has been really helpful. And she's invited them. The neighbors have come to the parish festival before at St. Stephen's, and she's invited them to Mass, and they've never come, but they definitely talk about it. And she's constantly inviting. So also just from a kid perspective.
Gosh, I love how ordinary this is. Aaron, I want to maybe go back to something that you said earlier. I want to talk about prayer, but just conscious first off that when we talk about the threshold, lest someone come in halfway, when we're talking about someone left side, we're not talking about the political spectrum. We're talking about, this mental framework of the conversion process that people go through. And I love the way you put it, right? If you read a book left to right, on the left side, it's people who are farther away from the Lord, journeying toward this point of trusting the Lord, entrusting themselves, and then growing in the life of discipleship. So lest anyone be confused, we're not talking political spectrum. We're talking this kind of left to right journey from not trusting God, not trusting Christians, the church, and slowly moving in relationship. You mentioned earlier about the Lord bringing your neighbors to mind in prayer and in your prayer. How do you pray for your neighbors?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's difficult. Brooke and I joke every once in a while, like, we love being with our neighbors, but sometimes we don't. Because the things that are priorities in their lives aren't the same things that are priorities in ours. And, I had this, I think how it initially came up was, I desired something more for our friendship. And as I thought more about it, I was like, well, what I want is I want Jesus to be a part of this. I want Jesus to be the foundation of our friendships. And so I was like, well, Lord, I can't force them to love you. I can't do those things. I can't change their heart. That's your job. And so I just said, surely I know for a fact that the Lord wants their heart more than I want the Lord to have their heart. So I just said, Lord, I want you to work in their lives, to provide for these opportunities where we can have meaningful conversations. Brooke, she always talks about sending her guardian angel out in front of her to tough meetings that she knows she has to go to prepare the other hearts. They've got guardian angels too, and they're like best friends, I'm sure. So why not, grease the skids, so to speak.
Right. I mean, the guardian angels were showing up at the L Street wine night too. So I don't think they had anything, but
that's right. Yeah. So I would just, at the end of my normal time of prayer, where I'd be kind of focused on my relationship with the Lord, I just would bring them to prayer just by name. I offer to the Lord each of them by name and just asked the Lord to do what he does. Just give him the opportunity to invite me into that, to their life, and to open their hearts. So to be honest, it's nothing magical. There's nothing profound that I say. I just make sure that the Lord knows they're on my heart, and I ask him to open up those opportunities for deeper conversations.
I love how you're delegating back to Jesus. You're like, Lord, you're going to have to take this one. That's awesome. Talk a little bit about, sometimes we like being with them and sometimes we don't. Because I think that I appreciate that honesty and that transparency, because some people have heard me tell my story. I had a profound moment learning to pray for my neighbor before I moved to Omaha. And a big part of that prayer was just the honest admission that, like, I don't like him. He keeps his yard way too neat, and it bothers me, mostly because my yard was not. And I had a beautiful moment as I was just honest with the Lord about my frustration with my neighbor. He revealed to me that it's just this like passing memory of my neighbor was always out on this perfectly groomed lawn playing catch with his kids. And I admired that. And I realized part of my frustration and annoyance with him was actually more of a jealousy, and just this little glimpse where the Lord kind of gave me this picture, or maybe completed the picture. I was obsessing about the perfectly groomed lawn. And then I was like, yeah, he's using that lawn really well. He's always out there playing catch. And suddenly my relationship with my neighbor went from like kind of a suspicious hostility, at least interiorly in me, to an admiration. And that changed, I never told him, but that changed the kind of, it's like, hey, I used to think you were a jerk, but I never told him, but it changed the conversations we had over the fence, because I was coming to him from a place of respect and admiration. Talk about those frustrations. How did you move past that? Because I think so often we withdraw from people that aren't like us. And so we give ourselves permission to withdraw and isolate. And it seems like you guys went the other way.
Yeah. Getting over them is always a work in progress, I'll say. There's still those annoyances. There's still things that they say. There's still subjects and topics that they talk about that make us feel uncomfortable, but it's not something that the Lord would ever shy away from, right? I mean, he spoke with prostitutes. He went into the homes of great sinners, and he allowed them to share their heart with him. And so that's kind of what I try to lean on, is how do I be here for them without encouraging that conversation? And so I've tried to refine my skill of changing the subject, changing the topic to something
Ministry
else.
skill 101. Yeah. Anyway, so about them Huskers.
There was one time, I don't remember what we were talking about, but he totally changed the subject and I caught it and I was like, oh, I see what he just did there. And I said something later and I was like, did you do that on purpose? He was like, yes, I did. We needed to get out of that conversation. But it changed it so fast.
But, to be honest, there are still times where we just kind of get up and walk away. And, we use the excuse of, oh, it's late, or, oh, we have an early morning, when you're unable to unravel where they've been, sometimes it's better to escape, but not to escape entirely and forever. Just that moment, just that time, until you can come back in a moment when maybe they're more in control of their speech, or when it's just one or two of them. I don't know. There are still times where we need to just separate and kind of recharge and go back to the Lord and say, Lord, I don't know what you did there, or if we did something wrong, but we need to try again. We need to try a different approach.
I mean, to be completely honest, you just asking the question, I'm like, oh, dang it, I need to go back outside more often. Because I feel like I have been, there are many differing views and strong opinions. And so it is easier to hide sometimes and come home and just close the garage and not go out. But it's those small moments of leaving the garage open when you walk around your car that opens those opportunities, just even to say, hi, how are you? How are things going? Versus like, I don't want to talk to you. That's a good question to help recommit to, like, yep, you're right. We just need to keep being there and being, for me, I know this is shocking. I was telling some people this afternoon that it's like, I think my neighbors actually talk more than I do. And they're like, what? And so I was like, I know it's shocking. And I now know how you all feel listening to me. But so I do, it's a good opportunity though, to be a good listener and just to like that, again, what you were saying, like just being there. And I think they're well aware of like our stance on things. And, when it's like, oh, yep, I've got a holy hour, or when they see me in the morning going to mass and like, where are you going so early? I just going to mass every day. Yeah, I just want to go spend time with Jesus every day. And so it's just those little nudges, those small seeds of planting. And like Aaron said, it's on God. I tell him that all the time with catechesis and home and school. I'm like, this is your school. It's your program. You got to do your thing. So I think the same thing with this, like these are, you love them more than we do. And so we just we're just planting seeds, and who knows what he'll do with them.
Well, I love how this is just so ordinary, but this is the way, this is the way the church is supposed to grow. Our neighborhoods are supposed to be better places, our places of work, our families, extended families, all those things. They're supposed to be impacted by our faith. And I love the way you all have just given yourselves to a very ordinary ministry of presence. Aaron, we've talked about this concept of the thresholds. How has that concept, as someone's moving from left to right, as they're drawing, deeper into a relationship with the Lord, how's that concept helped you pray for and engage your neighbors?
Oh, it has changed it immensely. I all of a sudden, evangelization became so much easier, less of a burden, because I think before, when I thought of evangelization, I thought of, how do I tell them about Jesus all the time, always? And when I learned about the thresholds and just these different moments in any individual's journey, I realized that sometimes they're not ready to hear specifically about Jesus. Like they just need to develop a friendship and move closer to that. So a couple of the steps, pre-trust and then trust, which is really where a lot of people stand today. I realize that I don't need to move them straight to a disciple of Jesus. I need to move them just enough to be curious about Jesus himself. And that was so freeing to me, just to be able to share my own experiences with them. I didn't need to specifically tell them a lot about Jesus himself, but just to share my own experiences with Jesus, such that it would start to build up a curiosity in and amongst themselves. So it was really freeing for me. I felt so much less pressure. And then again, kind of paying attention to them. Before, when I thought about evangelization, I always considered, what do I need to say? What do I need to do to help them understand? But really, the idea of this thresholds is to listen first, listen to where they are in their own journey, and then just help them take that one next step, help guide them in the one next step.
Aaron, that's fantastic. Maybe as we close here, I was reminded I came across a really very great article a couple of years back. It's this, they call it the BLESS method. Like, how do you bless your neighbors? And it's just a simple acronym for remembering the basics of relational outreach, which you guys have totally done. I mean, this is the foundation. So I'll share it quickly because I think it's helpful, and I think it's a nice mental way to capture what you all have lived. So the BLESS method is, begin with prayer. Just a commitment to praying with those around you, which is exactly, Aaron, you're talking about, just this prayer and this honest prayer where it's like, gosh, Lord, I have a desire here for something more. I want to have a little bit more meaningful conversation with this person. And then L, listen, right? Listen to them with a truly open heart, which is what you all did. I mean, there's just this real commitment to listen, and then every now and then change the subject, but just to let them be themselves, to hear them. E, eat or drink, share a beverage with them, right? It's just share life together. S, serve them. Like when we're listening, when we're in relationship, there's the opportunities for just simple service, presence, those things come up. And when all of those things are in place, we've begun with prayer, we've listened, we're eating, sharing life together, we're serving, then the opportunity to share comes up. And I love you talked about how your daughter is like this little evangelist, like sharing, recognizing, and able to, right? Because they grew up together. They have this conversation. They try to, like, after all, we went to Jerusalem together in the basement. We've been cooking with the book of James. They have this relationship where then all in that context, she's able to share. Really beautiful. What would you guys say as we close here? Just any real practical takeaways? If somebody's like, oh, this sounds great, how do I get started? I don't know. My life feels so busy. I don't even know my neighbors' names yet. If somebody's feeling a little bit of tug on their heart to do this themselves, give them some practical places to begin.
It seems almost a little too cliche, but obviously begin with prayer. I mean, there's no better start. The Lord, like we said, the Lord wants this more than you do. And if you're starting to have that desire on your heart, tell the Lord that. Tell him what your desire is. Tell him what you're wanting to do, and he'll open those avenues. He'll allow those encounters with your neighbors to occur.
Yeah, I would just add on to that too. I found, maybe not with the neighbors as much, but at school, in my role as home and school president, it's just really wanting to have those relationships and being like, Lord, what people do I need to run into today? And can you guide those conversations? And the days that I remember to specifically ask for that and to send my guardian angel ahead and to prepare the conversations are the days that with these amazing conversations just flow out of, business talk. at the school, and then it flows into something much more meaningful. So I would agree with just being intentional about asking for those, to have those conversations.
Yeah. So definitely first and foremost, pray. Again, it's his world, his work. Just allow yourself to be drawn into it. I'd say another very practical and easy step is to make yourself available, sitting on the front porch instead of the back, as we talked about, instead of going in and drinking a nice glass of ice water after mowing the lawn inside, sit on your front steps, take a slower walk to the mailbox, just be present and be available, especially in today's world of being isolated in our homes. People have a natural desire to want to talk to other people. They will, if you start with prayer and then make yourself available, I'm confident God will draw them outside of their house.
Yeah, I love that. I'm hoping, right, some of the people are listening. It's like, dear Jesus, please send my neighbor over with 2 drinks to come hang out with me. I just appreciate, Aaron, your willingness to take the sacrifices and the hardships of witnessing for the kingdom. Yeah, but the Lord will. That's one of the like hidden secrets of evangelization. When we make ourselves available, the Lord does all the heavy lifting. He brings people to us. Availability is, I'd say it's half, but it's more than half of the challenge.
Yeah, you can't build relationships if you're not there.
All right, I think we need to close there. That is perfect. For those of you who are interested, we referenced a couple of times the Thresholds of Conversion. We'll put a link on there. It's a really helpful mental roadmap that often helps us think and pray about the people the Lord has put in our lives. So check that out. We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Brooke, Aaron. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for what you guys are doing for the kingdom in very simple, ordinary ways. If you would like to check out the show notes, you can find them at equip.archomaha.org. There you can check out the blog, the show notes, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you want to share this out, we are at EquipCast, all one word, on all the major podcasting platforms. Guys, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, Jim.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.